Hello, everybody. This is the Empirical Audiophile. And I was reading over some of the comments. I want to thank those who made comments. I haven't gotten around to answering comments, but I spent over an hour or two answering some of the comments. So I want to thank you. Everybody's been quite polite. I've gotten some criticisms because I repeat myself, but that's only because being a teacher, you kind of do that sometimes when I had to teach people. And basically, in my career, I taught adults, and I never tried to embarrass somebody who couldn't understand what I was saying. So repeating myself, I guess that's just in my nature. But I will try not to do that. But in the comments, some people made, well, you need to change this, you need to change your power cords, you need to, fuses. Let me tell you something. In all the years I've been doing this and watched other people do this, and belonging to one of the biggest audio clubs around, which was the Chicago Audio Society, I've seen a lot of good-hearted people, give advice that literally ruin people's system. Now, like they say, the roads of hell are paved with good intentions. And sometimes good intentions, people will start doing what other people say. I had people tell me, you need to change the crossover, you need to do this, you need to do that. And I always said to them, I said, I don't want to spend money on something I can't hear, or something that may make such little difference. Who would give a gnat's ass if it existed? If you get what I mean. You have to watch that. You have to make these judgment calls yourself when it comes to your system and your money. I can only, on my channel, suggest things, but I'm not going to tell you that your system is going to sound great if you do it. That's strictly up to you. I remember when I bought my Kimber cable and I traded it in for the Kimber silver. I have all silver. I admit it. All my interconnection stuff are all silver cable. And I heard a difference. Was it a big difference? No, it wasn't a huge difference. It was a small difference. Was it worth the money? Well, back then, Kimber cable was a lot cheaper than it is today. I couldn't afford to buy silver Kimber cable today. It's just too expensive. For what it did, it was only, like this. It did improve it, but not by leaps and bounds that a lot of people were saying that it should do. That's what I'm saying. You got to trust these things. That is the final word. The last word is your ears. I remember I went to an audio show, and there was one fella that was at the audio show, and he also was at the Chicago Audio Society, and the company he worked for was selling cables. What cables they were, I don't remember. And I remember he was over at my house once, and he said, oh, these cables, they're great. They're wonderful sounding, really. And they were expensive cables. Oh, these are far better than the Kimber cable. Really? I said, I don't think I'm interested. They're expensive. You are claiming they're far better than the Kimber cables. I'm not going to go out and shell out my money to go listen to something just to have to take it all off and walk it back to the store. I'm not going to do that. This is the what some people say, the squirrels in your head or chasing your tail, or it can never end. Sometimes you have to take this advice with a grain of salt and say, thank you very much for the advice. However, I like the way my system sounds and I don't want to ruin it. And that's basically what happens. I've seen it happen. People listen to other people and they ruin their systems. And then you come over and listen to my system. It sounds great. And you go to listen to it and it's like, what did you do? I even knew a guy who had a real nice system, and it sounded good. It was MartinLogan's, in fact. And in his room, he had MartinLogan's. I came and listened to it, and it sounded good. I have to admit, it sounded good. And then the next time I came over, he had the bigger MartinLogan's, I guess maybe the next size up. And I looked at him, I said, why did you change? Because I listened to his first system, and it sounded good. Why would you change? So he played the new MartinLogan's, and I was no more impressed with them than I was with the smaller MartinLogan's he had in his room. And I just felt, after I left and listened to it, why did he waste his money? He could have stuck with the smaller MartinLogan's, and I thought it sounded great, fantastic. It wasn't my cup of tea as far as like the sound staging or the sound staging was great, but like a human voice was big. Instead of a human voice small coming out of your mouth, it was bigger. That's how the MartinLogan projected things. It was a very nice sounding system. The changing of the speakers, spending thousands of dollars more for better speakers and achieving next to nothing for what he spent, it was a shame. Not that it sounded bad, but it just didn't, to me, sound good enough to waste your money on the improvement it made, because the improvement just wasn't enough. Now, some audiophiles may say, I want every improvement I can have, even if it's 1%. I want it. But is your hearing that good? And I mean, it's your money. You can do whatever you want. It's your money. You can do whatever you want. I really don't care. But I did not find the improvement with his room being much of an improvement. And I'm just being honest with you. I just didn't find it. I've heard people like doctors and stuff went over to their homes, big rooms, big, huge infinity speakers. I mean, these things are 6-7 foot tall speakers and everything. And after we listened to the system, I think the speakers were back then $35,000 a pair. That was very expensive then for those infinities. And after we left, I asked guys, well, how'd you like it? Oh, I liked it, because there was more than one of us that listened to it. Oh, I liked it. And I said, I liked it, but it didn't have that warmth. It didn't have that body. It didn't have that emotion to the music. It played music, but it didn't have that emotion that you get off of some systems when you sit down and listen to them. You get that emotion from the way it sounds. I said, it was missing that. Didn't you feel that? And I said, yeah, we kind of felt that. It played the music good, but you're right. It was missing that emotion you get from a system. And I don't care what system you have, whether you have a horn system, and like I said, I've listened to some very small speakers like ProAx and Avalon's, small speakers, like the ProAx I heard on the VTL 300B amp, integrated amp. I think that integrated amp at the time, oh man, this is a long time, was over $7,500. Ooh, a lot of money. Sounded beautiful. I mean, it was like, wow, this sounds great. It had life, it had body to the music. It was just those little Pro X with that amp just sounded, I'll never forget it. That's how it hit me. And these are just little bitty bookshelf speakers. Very nice. Don't lose that. Don't, because you start listening to people and you start chasing your tail and you start getting that money and you realize, oh, maybe I could buy something better. And I've always been cautious because I've seen this happen to guys where they think they're going to get something better. Before you know it, they're changing this or changing that or changing this. And then you listen to it and all you can say to yourself is, what did you do? You messed it up. Why didn't you leave it well enough alone? Just like the guy who changed over from the MartinLogans. Before he did the change, I even told him, I said, I'm going to give you some advice. True advice. Don't change what you got. It really does sound good. We were playing records. He had a ton of records, like I have. He even had more records than I have, but he had a ton of records. And the system sounded good. It's like, no, he had the I Want It's, and he bought the other MartinLogans, and it was really no improvement. But I was, it's like, okay, I know this happens to guys. People tell you you should change this, change that. And then when you don't hear anything, you think to yourself, I spent this money and I don't hear anything. Just like the review I did of the Mac DAC and the Premier 9. That 29 years later, you would expect, without a doubt, that the Macintosh would blow away the Premier 9. You would expect that Macintosh to be the Bismarck blowing away the hood right out of the water, just disintegrating it. But it didn't do that. And I saw another YouTube channel, guy from Arizona, where he had a Macintosh with the built-in DAC, and he tried an older DAC. I think it was a Meridian. I could be wrong. And he said he just liked the way the Meridian sounded compared to the Mac. And he says, so I'm going to sell the Mac. So that goes to show you that just because something's brand new doesn't mean it's better. And listen to your ears, because you may find something. Now, I'm not saying the Mac DAC is bad. I'm saying that on your system, it may sound great. It may sound a lot better than it did on my system, is what I'm saying. I'm only telling you what I'm hearing. But don't let me make you decide that you're not going to buy it. See if you can get it. Listen to it. Listen to maybe some of the CDs that I have recommended to you. See what it sounds like. Because I have done that. Recommended CDs, things to listen for, are CDs that you're really familiar with. In fact, during this video, I wanted to show you, let me go get it, a CD. This was a CD recommended by a woman on a YouTube channel who does amps. She rebuilds them, she looks at them. Her name is Skunky, and I like her. She rebuilds amps. She looks at a lot of Chinese amps. Basically, stay away from Chinese amps. But her name's Skunky. You can look her up, YouTube. Look at her, how she modifies Chinese amps, how she says they're not quite right. Some of the amps are. Some of them she can't understand. She puts them on oscilloscopes and stuff and says, I don't know what I'm seeing and I don't know how they're getting this, but it's bad. But anyhow, she talked about an amp that she had modified and some of her Skunky amps that she had made. And she recommended this Laid Black Marcus Miller CD. Okay, right here. Laid Black Marcus Miller CD. And she talks about the first #1 track, Trip Trip, with the bass and stuff. But she plays it off a record. Anyhow, I did want to show you this. Good sounding CD, good sound staging. I'm glad to see this. I'm glad to get a CD that sounds good, that you can play, and it's like, wow, sound staging sounds good. Maybe the artist here, Marcus Miller, didn't want them to make a piece of garbage CD. You know how they do? They compress CDs to make them sound loud. You got to turn the volume down, and you know they don't care about the artist. Well, maybe this artist had some input on how he wanted this to sound, because this is a good sounding CD, and I would highly recommend it. It's called Laid Black, and it does have good bass in it, guitar, bass, and I mean the instrumentation, at least on my system, sounds real. You know, because it's a guitar. You know, guitars are being played with amps, usually tube amps and everything else, but it does. It sounds very, very good. That's another thing I wanted to tell you. If you don't have the CD and you want to try out your system, she recommended the record sounded good, so I got the CD immediately. It does. I was surprised. It's great to buy an audiophile CD that, well, it's out of the mainstream. It's just, you know, University Blue Note. Oh, it's a Blue Note. Okay. That explains why it sounds good. It's a Blue Note. That kind of explains it. Blue Note goes through a little bit. I have some Blue Note CDs. They go through a little more trouble of trying to make their CDs sound good. No wonder. Okay, I just noticed that back there. But if you don't have the CD, or if you want to listen, you can stream it. I don't know how good it's going to be streaming, but if you want a nice sounding CD, get this Laid Black. Decent CD. I also got the Interstellar CD. If you play the tracks 15 and 16, you know, sounds very good. The thing of it is it's very dynamic. And I think maybe that was from Interstellar. I think that could be through compression or something, because you're listening to it, and then if you turn it up, you know, to hear it, and then all of a sudden it just goes off the charts of how loud. I mean, we're talking, I sit 12 feet away, and this Interstellar can go over 100 plus dB at 12 feet away. All of a sudden, it's like, whoa, you know, they did something to it to, I don't know if they compressed it or what they did, but you really got to kind of watch it, because it's not real loud until all of a sudden, like that crescendo comes at the end and just blasts you right out of your chair. So you better make sure your system and your speakers can take it, so you don't wind up blowing out your tweeters or something. But it's not a bad sounding CD. It's not as good as the Laid Black CD, but it's not bad. But the older equipment sounds good. And if you have any of the Conrad equipment, if you have some of their solid state stuff, you can't go wrong with buying almost any old Conrad Johnson equipment. It was all made just to sound right. It was made very good, and it sounds good. That would be like someone asking me, well, what do you think about Jeff Roland? It's like, what? You can't go wrong with Jeff Roland. Even his older stuff. Come on, give me a break. Jeff Roland made some good sounding equipment. You can't go wrong if you buy some older Jeff Roland. It's just going to sound good. You know what I mean? It's just, you don't even have to ask. You find some of his old preamps or amps or something like that, go for it. When I listened to Jeff Roland off of the Tannoy Westminsters and we listened to the Conrad Johnson, they sounded very similar. They did. They sounded very similar off of those Tannoy Westminster Royals. And I was quite surprised. So you can't go bad with even Jeff Roland, Mark Levinson, the older equipment. I'm not talking about the cello stuff. I'm talking about when Mark Levinson actually made his equipment. You can't go wrong. It was great equipment. It sounded good. Come on. But people know what they got. So it doesn't go up for sale that much, and it's hard to find. Just like people buy old Macintosh equipment. You know, Macintosh has what I call a Mac sound. So that's something I'm going to caution you. Listen to Macintosh close, and if they give you 30 or 60 days, take every second of that time to listen to music off that Mac. Excuse me, because Mac has a Mac sound to it, and it's something that maybe you may not like, that Mac sound. So I'm really cautioning you. Macintosh has that Mac sound, and some people love it, and other people's they're on the other side. No, I don't care for it. You know, there's no in between where, you know, it doesn't sound bad. No, it's either they love it or they don't like it, the Mac, the way it sounds. It's just one of those pieces of equipment. They've been making equipment for 75 years, but they do have a Mac sound. So use every second of every minute of that time when you get Macintosh equipment to really, really listen to it. And the worst part of it is it has to break in, and you waste a lot of time unless you have a break-in CD where you can play that equipment for, you know, maybe a day or two to get it broken in so you can listen to it. But I've never had that problem with the Conrad Johnson or Mark Levinson or Jeff Roland. Wonderful pieces of equipment. And so that's the only thing I could say. When people suggest things to it, take it with a grain of salt. Don't hurry up and run out there and think that I got to have it, or I got to make that change, or I got to have a new crossover. Because you may wind up ruining something that you loved, and it's gone. And once it's gone, pretty hard trying to get it back after you spent your money. It's gone, and I've seen that. I've seen guys say, boy, I remember having those Kef speakers, and I wish I would have never sold them because they don't make them anymore. I wish I hadn't sold them. And I see people talk about the Conrad Johnson. Oh man, I had an old Conrad Johnson, a Premier 11A amp, and I sold it. And boy, I wish I hadn't done that. Or I had a Premier 10 preamp Conrad Johnson. Boy, was that a sweet sounding you know, and this is the mistakes we make. Believe me, I made mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. Just take baby steps is what I'm saying. And let the equipment grow on you. Let it ferment a while is what I'm saying. Let that equipment ferment in your system a while. If you feel after 30 or 60 days it's not your cup of tea, it's time to get rid of it. Ask an audiophile friend who's upfront with you, who will tell you the truth. Ask them for their opinion. So that's it for this video. I just thought I'd bring this up. I want to thank those who do make comments. Thank you very much. You've been very polite, nice. Those who have given me information, thank you. I don't think I'm going to do too many changes on my system because I'm sorry, I'm used to it. And if I ruin it, you know, shame on me. You know, I don't want to ruin it. I like the way it sounds, and I'm very cautious about what if I want to try to upgrade it. So when I give you a review, it's because I'm being very cautious about it. on something that you are getting the truth from me, because I have no advantage of telling you or scamming you or anything else, and you spending your money on garbage. So until next time, happy listening.